The seriousness of concussions continues to grab headlines.
And the discussion surrounding these head injuries goes beyond professional sports.
Our local school districts are becoming more proactive when it comes to protecting our children. In 2008, Gunderson Health System partnered with school districts from around the area, including schools in the Mississippi Valley Conference, to begin implementing impact tests. The computerized tests are given at schools and measure a student's memory, speed, and reaction time.
Over the past 5 years, high school athletic trainers employed by Gunderson Health System have administered more than 2,600 tests to local student athletes. Now, if one of these athletes is diagnosed with a concussion, he or she can take a second test at a hospital to compare scores to measure their recovery.
I certainly think it's the best tool that we have, and so far it's helped with the kind of that return to normal activity decision.
While effective, impact testing is a small component to a student athlete's recovery.
And as research on head injuries continues, there are still many questions about how to keep athletes and students safe long term. News 8's Nick Ragnar takes a look at local high school concussion protocol in a News 8 investigation.
Concussion protocol is different at every school district, with high schools developing and adding to their concussion procedures as more research becomes available. High schools in the Mississippi Valley Conference recently started keeping computerized records on the number of athlete concussions. Here's a look at the numbers from the 2014-2015 school year. The MVC includes La Crosse Logan and Central Aquinas, Onalaska Home and Sparta, and Toma High Schools. West Salem is part of the conference in football and plays in the Cooley Conference in all other sports. Home and High School is not reporting a number at this time. Now, no one knows the effect a concussion can have on a student athlete more than the athlete. I spoke with one area college student about his struggles with concussions both on and off the field, and he says those injuries changed the way he played and the way he lived his life.
This is the game Trent Cummings loves.
Always been a quarterback. Always loved touching the ball every single play. I like that responsibility, and I like to get the crowd on their feet with some deep throws.
He first started playing football as a fourth grader in Waunakee, Wisconsin. It's where he found his calling for a sport driven by physicality.
I was always a little bit more physical. Always wanted to wrestle around a little bit more. Like the hitting.
Those hits led to a successful high school career, ending with the hoisting of a state championship in 2009.
Two state champs, Reedsburg wins, and then Waunakee.
Fast forward to 2013, and Cummings was playing on a new, more competitive field as a University of Wisconsin lacrosse Eagle.
Just seeing the field, seeing the bluffs, I knew that this is a spot where I wanted to be, and I didn't make a bad decision.
Over the next few years, Cummings would settle in as the team's starting quarterback.
And I put pressure on myself to, be the best player that I can be.
Until the hits that got him into the sport started keeping him from playing it.
I'm a football player, so when I'm not playing, it's, life's just not the same.
It was at this time Cummings began to feel different as a result of multiple concussions. And when it was time to trade out his pads for a backpack, symptoms lingered.
I was constantly having brain farts where I would look at something I know the answer to, but I just couldn't spit it out.
That's one of the concussion-related classroom struggles West Salem High School is looking to avoid.
And that's devastating for a student.
Connie Trojanic, the school's nurse, says the impact head injuries have on a student-athlete's education can be noticeable, with grades sometimes falling 1 or 2 full letters.
They can't recall what it was they learned. We had one girl who had a significant head injury. She had actually 3 right in a row, and she couldn't remember anything.
But it wasn't always that obvious. Trojanic says high schools didn't understand concussions, much less have a protocol to follow after a student suffered one when she first started 15 years ago.
They wouldn't necessarily even be pulled from the sport, never given any type of classroom modifications. Nobody really paid attention to what it was doing to them academically.
That's not the case anymore at West Salem High School. Along with advances in back-to-play protocol, a larger focus is being placed on a student's recovery in the classroom.
Putting you on the spot.
It's a process that Trojanic began in 2011 and continues to refine, with protocol now starting after an athlete suffers a head injury.
And at that time, I email the teachers and I'll say, this student has had a injury and has a possible concussion.
Teachers will then enforce classroom restrictions, including limited computer work, no academic testing, modified homework assignments, and rest periods throughout the day depending on the student's schedule. Students are also excused from classes that will intensify symptoms, such as physical education. And while there is no concussion severity grading system, it's important to note that all student concussions are taken case by case depending on reported symptoms.
Until they're headache free, we don't push them back too much into the classroom.
Trionic says it's a slow process, but is important in working students back towards their regular classroom attentiveness.
I mean, you have one brain. You have one chance to recover from a concussion correctly, because there's no going back and redoing.
There's no going back and redoing for Trent Cummings. Because of his numerous concussions, he eventually quit the sport he loved in 2015. An ultimatum West Salem High School hopes no athlete ever encounters, but knows when it comes to their students, there's only one right decision.
They're in school, first of all, to learn. You know, this is the reason they're here. But so they need to be able to be back in the classroom. If they can't sustain a full day in the classroom and do all the academic rigors of work, then they shouldn't be out in the field or in the court.
Make sure you're playing for the right reasons, and make sure you're taking care of yourself. You know, don't be selfish out there. It's tough to walk away from, but there's bigger things in life than the game of football.
I also spoke with West Salem's high school's athletic trainer Kirsten Lemire. She works closely with the school nurse and is behind the school's back to play protocol. They both agree student communication is an important tool during recovery, which actually turns out to be a difficulty on its own. Lemire says students will sometimes keep their head injuries a secret so they can continue playing sports.
More oftentimes than not, I have students that will knowingly tell another to lie to the trainer because, you know, that they have symptoms. The nicest thing I have actually seen recently is I had a student that came to me and said, yeah, all my teammates were telling me to lie about it.
Now, Lemire says this is where second impact syndrome can occur, which is when a student suffers a second concussion before recovering from that first concussion fully.
All right, so how do high schools even go about trying to avoid that in the first place?
Right. Well, there's not really, I guess, a permanent way to stop a student athlete from lying. If they're going to lie, they're going to lie to play sports. But both Lemire and Trionic say that education to both, parents, teachers, administrators, students, everybody on concussions and those possible long-term effects is really an important tool that they can use today.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nick. Very interesting. And high schools from the Mississippi Valley Conference keep in contact with one another for the latest and most successful concussion protocol.
So if you'd like to learn more about what those schools are doing to keep student athletes safe, just head to our website at news8000.com.